Sage Podcast. We're here to bring you advice and tips from seasoned pros and experts to help you improve your business. I'm Karl Barham with Transworld Business Advisors, and my co-host is Rico Figliolini with Mighty Rockets Digital Marketing and the publisher of the Peachtree Corner magazine. Rico, how about introducing our sponsors?
Sure, we have quite a few sponsors at this point, so I want to be able to share that. First off, this place that we're doing this podcast, I did one earlier today, and that was at a different an incubator, but here, Atlanta Tech Park, is where we do our Capital Sage. They're a curated tech accelerator group that has a huge event space, multiple workshops and things going on during the week, introduction to financiers, to venture capitalists and other people, membership, networking, all sorts of things, headed by Robin Chanin, who used to be a chief enterprise innovation officer at Samsung and several other companies, including a CIO at BlackBerry. So, great place to be at. If you have a company that you want to go to, that you want to grow, this is the place. Our other two sponsors are Explore Gwinnett. We are a diverse county, probably the most diverse in the state. They are the Tourism Bureau of Gwinnett County. So introduce people to unique foods and all that. Visit them on exploregwinnett.org, and you can find our top 10 list I do with them on livinginpeachtreecorners.com. Last, Cinebistro, luxury movie dining. It's really a 4-star restaurant that happens to show movies. They have a scratch kitchen. They have a fine wine list and cocktails and such. So check them out there at cmxcinemas.com. That's what we have.
Thank you very much. Well, today on the Capital Sage Podcast, our guest is Robin Chanin, co-founder and executive director of Global Growers. She's helping farmers build sustainable farming practices here in the U.S. where they could make a living farming and helping provide fresh vegetables in a sustainable way for local markets. Robin, how are you doing today?
Doing well, thanks, Karl.
Good. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into this work?
Sure. So I have a background in working and doing some international development, working in the refugee community through different education programs, but I actually left that work behind and took a little bit of a different turn with my career and got involved with organic farming, organic fruit and vegetable production for local distribution particularly. And through a series of events, I had an unexpected opportunity to put those two things together. And with my good friend and colleague, Susan Pavlin, we launched Global Growers Network in 2010.
Oh, fabulous. Well, Global Growers is a nonprofit, as many people know, but we like to talk about some of the aspect of it that is traditional when people think about a small business. So let me start off. Is nonprofit a business?
A nonprofit should be a business. So something that I like to share with people about nonprofits is that a nonprofit is a tax designation. It's not a business model. And nonprofit is really a misnomer because you must make a profit. Like any other business, if you do not bring in more money than you spend, you are not able to do your work anymore and you will go out of business. So the real difference with the nonprofit designation or a 501c of some type or a 501c3 organization, pretty traditional service model of a nonprofit, it's a tax designation. So the only difference, we do all the same things. We have payroll, we have operating costs, we've got our own overhead. All of those things would be the same as any comparably sized business. But at the end of the year, we file a different tax form, and we fall under a particular tax code where certain types of revenue are not taxed. But that if any business revenue is, we do pay tax on.
How do you designate that? How does that work? Business revenue versus nonprofit?
All of our revenue, like any business, you'll kind of account for your revenue into different categories. Okay. So for us, one of the things that makes Global Growers unique is that we have what in the nonprofit world is known as earned income. So our earned income is done through business activity. And in our case, we sell produce. Right. And we bring produce to market. We sell through a number of different distribution channels. And that's a service that we provide to farmers, but we do make money in doing that, and we're able to reinvest that money back into our organization. So one difference is that we will pay sales tax on all of that produce that we sell. So we are contributing taxes in that sense. But when we get revenue as a donation, as a charitable contribution, we do not pay income tax on that in the same way a business would for their revenue. And then the other difference is that as a corporate and governance structure, a nonprofit doesn't have an owner. So the idea of nonprofit is that, as in my case, as the co-founder and executive director, I get paid a salary by Global Growers, but I have no equity stake in it. There's not a single individual who is able to personally profit from the organization.
But it's interesting in Global Grow's case and many others, even though the founder or there's no owner to profit, the community that you serve is one of the stakeholders that get most of the profit. When you went down the path to create this business, what made you choose to build a business that serves a community in a particular way, using kind of business principles and so on to drive that activity?
So I think, like any strong business model, we sought to have really diversified revenue streams, and not put all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak. And so we did not want our only revenue stream to be charitable contributions, because those contributions, you have very little control over those activities. Depending on how the economy is, and if people are feeling charitable or not, and if they have the ability to give, depends on what's happening with different foundations. There's lots of things if you're relying solely on different philanthropic supports, you have very little control over that decision-making process. Whereas if you have a valuable service that you can bring to market, or a valuable product that you can bring to market in different ways, then you've got some more agency, and you also have multiple different revenue streams coming in. So when we started Global Growers, we knew that we wanted to be as diversified as possible with our revenue, with the logic that, if anything comes up short in a particular area, we could lean into another revenue stream.
What are some of the ways that Global Growers receive revenue in? What are some of those different methods?
We have 3 large buckets of revenue. One is grants, and so grants typically come from private foundations, from governments, different grant-making authorities. They tend to come from different institutions or people who have a charitable foundation that they've set up. That's one bucket. A second bucket is what I described before, our earned income stream, and that for us is primarily our sales program. We call that our enterprise model, and so I'll describe Global Growers sometimes as a nonprofit social enterprise. And our third bucket is contributions, and that's typically things coming from individuals. It includes if we have a fundraising campaign and ask 100 people to chip in $10. And it also comes, we have as a food and agriculture organization, we put on a handful of food events each year that people are able to purchase tickets to, and that is a portion of that ticket sale is a charitable contribution.
So if you think about the social enterprise of this, you're impacting the communities in ways. What are the ways in which Global Growers is unique in helping the community that it serves?
Sure. So Global Growers supports people who grow healthy food for our community, and we're especially known for our work with farmers who came to this country as legal refugees. And we create pathways for talented farmers to contribute their agricultural skills to our local food system and our local economy. And Global Growers is the only organization in Georgia whose primary focus is on connecting talent of the refugee and immigrant community and people who have brought their farming skills here from other countries, who connects that to opportunities to grow food, to sell food, and to share their culture and food with the Atlanta community.
Give me an example of some of the farmers that you work with, and what part of Metro Atlanta do you operate?
Most of our work is on the east side of Metro Atlanta in DeKalb County. Many people from the Atlanta area know that DeKalb County, and in particular Clarkston, is known as being one of the most diverse areas, and that's because starting in the late 80s, early 1990s, Clarkston was designated by the federal government as a destination for refugee resettlement, and that's a federally run program that works with the United Nations to identify, screen, and bring people in to resettle in this country. So most folks that we work with have come through Clarkston. It's another way Clarkston is described as the Ellis Island of the South. That's a gate. It's kind of a gateway city, but not everyone stays there. So we work with folks who are in Clarkston, Decatur, Tucker, Stone Mountain, and also starting to move out to Snellville, Loganville, Gwinnett County. So we're primarily on the east side of town that we're working with. We partner with growers from over a dozen different culture groups and language groups, and so it's a pretty dynamic work environment. Lots of different languages being spoken, different cultures in the mix, and it's a really thriving and dynamic place. We work with folks from Burma, from East Africa, Burundi, Congo, Tanzania. We work with folks from Iran, from Iraq, from Bhutan, all over.
So one of the things that must be interesting, most people when they come to the U.S., whether it's from Italy or Germany or so on, they bring over their culture through food. But if you move to the U.S., you may not be able to get the same foods, vegetables that you got in your home country. How do you help them adapt the farming practices here so that they're able to grow more culturally appropriate food for their diets?
Sure. So one of the really exciting things that I love to talk about global growers is the incredible skills and agricultural expertise that folks are bringing here to our community. And so, a lot of the way I think about our work is connecting talent to opportunity. And, that takes work of connecting the dots. So, we do not teach people how to farm, but we do work with folks to adapt those skills to be successful in a new climate. One example that I share typically is agriculture. No matter where you are in the world, agriculture is all about timing. When do you need to do certain things based on the seasons and the rainfall and all of these other forces based on market pressures, things like that. So one of the first things that we do in working with growers is help them get their timing back on. When do you do what in this country? And usually that starts with a conversation of, hey, what does farming look like in your home country? When are you doing certain things? And anyone who's a farmer can talk you through in minute detail what happens throughout the course of the seasons and the year. And so we'll begin to, we'll ask people to share that, and then we'll share with them what the timing looks like here. And people will usually, you get something kind of on paper, and it usually takes a few seasons until you've that becomes more ingrained and starts to feel more natural. A second thing that we'll do is we'll talk about, what types of crops did you produce in your home country? And we're really lucky here in the Southeast United States. We have a pretty extensive growing season. So with the exception of your most tropical fruits, things like mangoes and bananas and things that really can't tolerate the occasional cold snaps that we get here in Georgia, we can grow most things that people were growing in their home countries. And usually that's a moment that folks get really excited when they realize what the possibility is. Most growers that we work with, same thing with a lot of immigrants and their culture, there's this a desire to be able to continue with some of the traditional cultural foods, but there's also a real desire to learn about new crops and try and experiment with new things. For the commercial growers we work with who really do this as a business, their mindset, like any entrepreneur, is what do people want to buy? That's what I'm going to
Mhm.
That's what I'm going to grow. So most of our farm sites do look like a blend of cultures. We see traditional Southern American staples, your collard greens, cabbage, turnips, sweet
Mhm.
potatoes, things like that, because we do have a market for those, and they do grow quite well here in this region. We also grow East African amaranth greens and Burmese eggplants and Bhutanese chili peppers and all these other sorts of like pretty interesting crops and things that I didn't know about before. So I've had quite a learning journey of my own in getting to learn about different foods and crops and food and farming traditions from around the world.
So I'm curious also some of the work you do with people in community gardens.
Mm-hmm.
How do you support growing across the metro Atlanta and
Mm-hmm.
kind of people be more familiar with where their food is sourced and how it's grown?
Mm-hmm. So we operate a network of farm and garden sites around metro Atlanta, and through that we are able to create access to more than 20 acres of land where we connect people to growing opportunities. And that approach, by activating all of this land that had not been previously in any food production, and this is church land, it's government-owned land, it's private land that we lease or acquire through normal land acquisition practices, but by activating more land in food production, and also by connecting folks and communities that traditionally have not had the connection to land, makes more healthy produce abundant and accessible throughout metro Atlanta, but particularly in low-income communities. And that's something where I think Global Growers has a really deep impact. We tend to be known in the market as a brand that sells food and brings food to market, and you'll see our name on restaurant menus, or you'll see us at a local farmer's market, but there's so much food that is going not through Global Growers sales channels, but home directly with the growers and being shared with their family, with their friends, with their neighbors. We have certain community growers that really take a lot of pride in being known as the go-to sources for local produce, and they enjoy the activity of gardening and enjoy the activity of farming, and then they give it all away.
I know it must feel great to work in an organization and be part of a business that has this kind of impact beyond just profits.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the challenges that an organization, a nonprofit could face, and what are the ways in which you're able to react to those types of things?
Sure. So, like any business, we kind of share all those common challenges any small business does. Hiring, managing, accounting, making sure we have the right insurance, all of those standard things. As a farming and a food organization, we're also at the whims of what federal government policy decisions are being made, what's happening at the USDA, what is local land policy looking like. On top of that, and I think most importantly, we're really at the whims of climate as well. Both, typical weather events that can wreak havoc, as well as climate change, which is bringing some really unexpected challenges to us, for us. Recently, last month, we had a significant flood at our primary commercial farm site. And that we're facing a major crop loss and a major loss of both investment we've already made as well as future revenue. And so we've had a pretty significant disruption to our business activities that we're needing to recover
Can you describe
from.
what happened there?
Sure. So let's see. On April 19th, Atlanta had this pretty significant rain event. We got several inches of rain in just a few hours, and one of our properties is located adjacent to a creek. That creek usually has about, coming past our property on a normal day, would have about 6 inches of water going through it. It rose more than 10 feet in a few hours. If you go and look, you'd be shocked because this creek has quite steep banks. It can really it could hold a lot of water in it. But it was too much, too fast. We're also seeing in farming in more of a metro area, we see more development happening around the farm, which means more water is running off and into those waterways than ever has before.
It's less porous land.
More impermeable surface and less open land for where that water traditionally would have been absorbed. And so that water came up over the creek banks, rushed through the farm, and hit us at a point where in April we were in full spring production. Farming is a seasonal business. We were in full spring production, harvesting all of our spring crops, and we had just finished most of our summer planting. So in less than 2 hours, we saw 2 seasons get completely wiped out.
And you know what? That's part of that is the 100-year floodplain that's gone away.
That's
now
right.
we're in the 500-year mark.
That's right.
And we're seeing more of that. And, people don't understand that even because the 100-year flood mark, they think, well, it happens 1 in 100 years. That's not what that stands for. It can happen several times in a year even that mark gets set. So that's really, I've known farmers because of my background being Italian and going back to Italy and my family, and it's a tough business to no matter where you live. But the experience that you're getting, all this type of food, that's really something.
Yeah, absolutely. And the farmers that were impacted at that location, how many farmers were impacted by that?
So that was our flagship site, Bamboo Creek Farm, that had this flood, and it's a 15-acre farm that hosts 5 independent businesses. Actually, earlier in the show, as you were describing Atlanta Tech Park, one of your sponsors, I was thinking, we're the farming version of Atlanta Tech Park. We're a business accelerator and a place where startup businesses can co-locate, have access to resources, have access to one another. Probably access to markets they wouldn't have been able to independently. It's really, this model that we've developed is really unique in the Atlanta area because it's a collaborative site. So similar to a tech hub, we're a farm hub. And that comes with that collective power. And also builds on a tradition of cooperative farming systems that we've seen for years in the Southeast and all over the world as well. But that means that with this one event, several businesses got wiped out.
But you can also, because you have that co-op system, that power, I think, and the experience, you probably could go to the federal government. In some cases, I know the hurricane money that's supposed to be coming to Georgia farmers still not coming in. But, there's those opportunities to get subsidies or money to be able to help that type of problem, I think.
That's what we're working on right now.
So how do you respond to something like that? We're trying to help the community. This is a business problem, whether it's retail business that goes through a tornado that's been hitting the Midwest, or you've got to react to that. What are some of the things that you can do and others can do to help?
Our first reaction, most immediate reaction, has to be human-centered. So this was something that had a significant impact on 5 farmers who quickly lost their livelihoods. So the first thing that, and this is also a group of farmers who were already coming here as legal refugees, were in the midst of rebuilding their lives here in the United States already. So we immediately began to connect them with partners and friends to be sure that their basic needs are getting met, that they're able to pay their bills, pay their rent, pay their mortgages, whatever it can be. And so these farmers, their families, and the Global Growers team and the scores of people who are a part of our network have been learning from each other, helping one another, and want to see each other prosper and thrive. We rallied to try and provide some immediate financial support to the farmers. We continue to work closely. Their goal is to be back and earning income independently as soon as possible. And so we're evaluating our next steps, but we know we will rebuild. We know that we already, before the flood, we were working on a strategy to be able to expand this model that we developed at Bamboo Creek Farm of this collaborative farm site. So it's time for us to accelerate that we were in the midst of looking for a larger property where the existing businesses would be able to grow, and where we could bring new businesses in to help launch and accelerate the development of other food and farm businesses. And so that need is now more important than ever as we recover.
Oh. What advice would you give someone that's looking to start something like this, a nonprofit business, small business? Some of the things that you learn along the way would be one or two things that you advise people to consider that helped you along the way.
Well, do your research before you start. We spent several years working to see what was already happening in this space, who's doing what's not getting done, or what's not getting done well. So don't think that you're the only one who's had a business idea. Ideas are not really worth a whole lot, but if you can find your niche, and we found a very specific niche. We are the only organization in Georgia whose primary focus is on connecting the talent of international farmers who have come here as legal refugees and immigrants to opportunities in sustainable agriculture. That's very specific. That means that we don't really have competition in that space. We are known as the go-to organization who's doing this work, and that allows us to maneuver and focus, and also attract some attention and attract some resources, because any business is going to need to have their own unique value proposition, and that's what you're going to be told and coached, and ours is pretty unique, and we think valuable.
Wow, fabulous. Well, I want to thank you very much for sharing your experience with Global Growers and passing on some advice to folks. If folks want to learn more about Global Growers, how can they find Global Growers and reach out to you and the Global Growers team?
The easiest way to find us is on our website, globalgrowers.org. You can also find us on the usual social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, and such. Encourage you to follow us on social media, stay updated with us. We're going to be announcing some pretty exciting rebuilding plans in the near future. We're going to be, in the coming year, we'll have an additional property that we'll be bringing online, so that we can offer more new Americans an opportunity to bring their talents and heritage to our local community. So stay tuned for more. You'll be able to come out and visit us, and more importantly, you'll be able to purchase fresh, healthy, locally grown food from our partner farmers.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin.
We wanna thank Robin for being a great guest here, and also Atlanta Tech Park for hosting the Capitalist Sage podcast. I'm Karl Barham with Transworld Business Advisor of Atlanta Peachtree. We like working with small businesses and business owners, and I find your organization interesting because it could be a farmer, it could be someone opening a retail shop, but connecting business owners with the resources to be successful, whether you're trying to acquire a business or sell a business, is what we do, and we can be reached at www.tworld.com/Atlanta Peachtree if you just want to chat about opportunities with your business. And also Rico, tell us a little bit about what you got going on.
Sure, I'm Rico Figliolini. Karl, thanks for, Karl does the heavy lifting here for Capitalist Sage, and it's good doing the show, and I love hearing about the Global Growers. I have, my company is Mighty Rockets, and I do social media marketing along with videography and creative services for a few different companies here in the United States and one in Canada. Plus, I'm publisher of Peachtree Corners magazine, so that's a 6-time-a-year publication now. And I also host several other podcasts, including one called Prime Lunchtime with Brian Johnson, the city manager here in Peachtree Corners. So a variety of things I do, jack of all trades almost, master of none. But, that's okay. But if you want to learn more about what I do, mightyrockets.com is the website, or livinginpeachtreecorners.com, and that's the site for the magazine and some of the podcasts.
And also, we'd like to thank our sponsors.
Yes, of course. Explore Gwinnett. Love them. Great top 10 list. CMX Cinebistro. Go to them. I think they're showing Endgame still.
Yeah.
But enjoy dinner and some cocktails. It's a great place. in town center, which is new, which is filling up quite a bit with new stores opening and new restaurants. It's going to be a good place to be.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us on the Capital Sage podcast. We're going to continue to bring you different types of small business leaders and owners and different ways to help you improve your business. So stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks, Karl.
Great.